Welcome to this tutorial on how to play Cyberpunk 2020. My name is Drakbeck, and I will show you the base fundamentals you need to know to play Cyberpunk 2020 as a player. Cyberpunk 2020 uses two types of dice, D10s and D6s. The D10s are used in attempting to do something in the game like shooting, fighting in melee, interacting with objects / your surroundings, or using a specific skill to complete an abstract task. More on that when explaining roles. The D6s are used mostly for damage from bullets and melee unless otherwise specified. There is also another D10 that has their numbers listed in the tens place. This is used in combination with the previous D10 to roll a percentage, which can result in any number between 1 and 100. Though the D100 is mostly used by referees, you may also use an actual D100, a die with 100 sides, like this one, if you have it. Now we move on with character creation. Go to section 2 on page 25. There's 3 ways to generate a character, but we'll use method 1, rolling 9d10 and adding them together to use as a budget to spend between 9 stats. Stats represent the inherent ability of your character in specific areas. They will be explained when we generate and distribute the points. Note, any one stat must be between a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 10. The numbers we generated are 7, 6, 4, 9, 8, 3, 3, 7, 2, 3, for a total of 52 points to distribute. Referencing pages 26 through 29, we learn what the meaning of each statistic is for your character. Intelligence is a combination of remembering information, logical deductions, and perception. The roles that benefit most from this stat are netrunners and corporate players. Reflexes contribute to reaction time, driving / piloting skills, and all physical combat including melee and shooting, and athletic ability. Players with the roles of solos, nomads, and rocker boys should invest highly in reflexes. Cool is your ability to resist torture and drugs, be convincing to large groups of people, pick up on gang street activity, and intimidate other people. Nomads and solos should invest in a high cool. Technical ability is your character's ability to know, tinker with, and repair technology of all kinds, but mostly the cybernetic kind. It also contributes to the ability to heal injuries, but mostly on others rather than oneself. Roles of techies and medtechies should invest highly in the skill. Luck is a pool of points you can draw from before attempting to make any D10 roll, adding the used luck points as a bonus to the roll. This only refills at the end of a game session. Attractiveness is a measure of how conventionally attractive you are to the common sensibilities of the 2020 world, including appearance and sexual appeal. Medias and rocker boys should have high attractiveness. Movement allowance is how far your character can move during a round of combat. This value is multiplied by 3 for the run value afforded to them, and their leap distance is run divided by 4, rounded down. Empathy is your human capacity to relate with other living things, your persuasiveness, your performance, your ability as a leader, your ability to seduce, and your ability to talk your way out of any situation. It is also your humanity stat, which is your empathy times 10. You need humanity to spend in order to get cybernetic body augmentations for your character. Losing 10 points of humanity reduces your empathy by 1, and once your empathy reduces to 0, you become a cyber psycho, which means the referee takes over your character and plays them as an indiscriminate psychotic murderer devoid of any reason. Personally, in my game, due to Atom Smasher's existence, I will allow any player that's about to become a cyber psycho to roll a 1d100 when they start the turn. If they manage to roll 100, I will allow them to keep their character and let them play as normal. Body type modifier is a measure of your strength, constitution, and endurance. It allows you greater chance of resisting stuns and death, lets you reduce incoming physical damage, allows you to carry and lift more weight, lift is equal to 10 times your body type in kilograms, and deadlift is 40 times your body type in kilograms, and do more damage with melee attacks. Best for solos, nomads, and rocker boy roles. In order to explain roles, we're going to go to pages 46 and 47 to explain exactly what each individual role does. For a basic explanation, a role is essentially a career. A lifestyle the player's character essentially adopts and learns unique skills from. A player must choose a role in order to create a character for Cyberpunk 2020. Every character's role also has a skill specifically tied to that role that gives their character their starting infamy or fame and starting money. Each role skill may also be associated with a specific stat, meaning that when this skill is used, you may add a bonus equal to the associated stat. Starting with cops, cops have authority, a special kind of intimidation that gives them a secular authority with the backing of the government and justice behind them, whether corrupt or not. This skill is associated with the cool stat. Rocker Boys have charismatic leadership, their ability to get large crowds of people to do extreme things like party, riot, or violently protest. They can sway crowds of people equal to this ability level squared times 200. This is associated with your cool stat. My advice for referees is to carefully run this. This does reflect the ability to command large legions of people to do whatever you please. However, there should be some setup involved which doesn't exactly spell it out in the rules. If you look at Section 13 Never Fade Away, Johnny Silverhand, when trying to storm Arasaka Tower, had a lot of build-up in order to get a crowd going to make sure that he can have enough bodies to penetrate Arasaka Tower. Referees should also discern between the crowds that are willing to do things for the Rocker Boy and crowds that aren't. A whole gang that's against the Rocker Boy wouldn't obviously support the Rocker Boy in any way. I would personally rule it that based on the severity of the request of the Rocker Boy, that there should be a higher difficulty check related to this stat, the charismatic leadership, in order to get that crowd to do what the Rocker Boy wants. Solos have combat sense, which directly adds as a bonus to the awareness skill and initiative. The reason why these two is because awareness allows you to not be ambushed or surprised, and initiative allows you to act first in combat, making them extremely capable lethal killers. Medias have credibility, which is the ability to convince people, organizations, and authorities of stories, and your ability to gather crucial information by convincing people to give you information, whether by persuasion or coercion. Associated with intelligence. Nomads have family. This is your standing in your tribe and ability to call on your tribe for resources or people to help you accomplish your goals. Associated with intelligence. Referees will need to do a lot of prep work in order to provide adequate resources to pull from for these nomads. Netrunners have interface. This allows them access to the menu, or in other modern terms, quick hacking. While anyone can traverse the net, it is netrunners who only have the sole access to be able to quickly hack things in their immediate environment. Techies have jury rig, a general repair skill that also allows them to temporarily repair or alter any technology for 1d6 turns per level of skill, after which the item will no longer function or break. Medical techies have medical tech, their ability to perform major surgeries and general medical repair. Corporates have resources. This is the ability to use company resources similar to Nomad's family, but with a much more impressive array of people and technology, associated with intelligence. Referees will also have to do some prep work, refer to Section 14 for specific corporations, and allow resources to be used so long as it actually ends up furthering corporate interests. Finally, fixers have street deal, a special ability to set up jobs and make deals, trade resources for other resources or favors, and gather rumors and deals from the street, associated with the cool stat. Moving on to page 41, we have skills. Every skill can be rated from a minimum of 10, which is easy, to a maximum difficulty of 30, which is impossible. Skills are the measure by which if it is decided whether a character is able to complete a task or not. When attempting to do something, first you must identify which skill is most related in accomplishing that specific task. Once the skill is determined, you then add that skill's number plus the stat that it's derived from, and then roll a 1d10. If the resulting number is equal to or higher than the difficulty value set by the referee, then you have accomplished the task. If, however, it is lower, then you have failed. Any skill made against another player is always a contest. The two players must roll a 1d10 and add the relevant skill and stat in order to determine who is the winner in the outcome. Rolling a 10 gives a critical success, adding one more die roll plus the previously rolled 10. Rolling a 1 is a critical failure. The attempt automatically fails, and if it is possible, you must make a roll for the severity of the blunder on page 43 on the fumble table. Now, how to determine what character gets what skills. This can be found on page 43, where a character gets a career skill package associated with their role. A career skill package is a set of skills that are specifically tied with the career of the role. You have 40 points to spend in 10 skills, including the role skill. Page 44 shows pre-made packages for every given role. However, with the referee's approval, you may choose different skills based on justifications for why your character would have that skill as a career skill. You may also even invent your own role and role ability, but only with the referee's approval. The example given is the model actress role with the pose career skill. It is not explained what this role or skill does in the book, however, it is used as an example, so creativity is encouraged. We're going to go ahead and, for simplicity's sake, choose solo, because that's essentially the fighting class, and it'll be easier to demonstrate all the fundamentals of the game with that class. Solos will heavily benefit from the reflex stat, the body type stat, and the empathy stat. The reason why we choose these is reflex is directly tied to combat, body type is directly tied to how much you can carry and how much damage you can absorb, and empathy directly increases your humanity so that you can get more cybernetic enhancements. Next, we'll put some points into intelligence and cool. Intelligence gives you a higher awareness so you don't get ambushed, and cool allows you to keep your cool under pressure for when those difficult times comes around. We'll put some points into movement allowance and luck and attractiveness, but attractiveness isn't really that necessary. And tech, they say to put some points in tech for guns and fixing your guns, but I feel like we can go to people for that, so it's not that necessary. Here I distributed my 52 points, 6 intelligence, 10 reflex, 3 technical ability, 9 cool, 3 attractiveness, 3 luck, movement allowance of 5, 10 body, and 8 empathy. You'll notice that the reflex and empathy have a slash in them. This is because your reflex and empathy will fluctuate a lot based on what you're carrying and the stats of your character. So your current reflex will be listed on the left-hand side, where your total that you usually have will be listed on the right. I checked off the box for solo, and my handle on the street for this solo is Dragon. Your run and leap are based off your movement allowance. My movement allowance is 5, and running allows you to move 3 times your movement allowance. So we can run up to 15 meters if we elect to take a run in any combat action. Our leap is divided by 4, so our movement allowance divided by 4 is 1.25 rounded down, so we have a 1 meter leap. Our lift is referring to how much we can deadlift anything. So our deadlift is determined by using our body modifier times 4. This means that we can deadlift 400 kilograms at any one time. Our save number is equal to our body type modifier. And the reason why this matters is because this is how we determine stun saves and death saves. To make a stun save or a death save, you need to roll the value of your save or lower. So, since we have a body modifier of 10, our save will be rolling a 10 or lower. This number will decrease as we take more wounds. For example, under serious wounds, our stun is equal to 1, so then our save will be 10 minus 1, so when we have to make another stun save, it will need to be 9 or lower. And then finally, we have our body type modifier. Since we have a 10 in body type, we can determine that our body type modifier based on the page 29 table is very strong, and therefore a -4. The reason why this number is negative is because this is how much damage we can reduce once damage actually reaches us. And like I said before, if you take, say, 3 damage, but have a body type modifier of -4, then you will take, at minimum, 1 damage. Now that we've determined our stats, it's time to determine our character. We're going to go to section 3, Tales from the Street. There's a bunch of rolling to do in order to see how your character navigates their life path, but to save some time, I'm just going to do it and give you the result afterwards. Alright, I rolled for my life path. I got a 7, which means I like wearing camos. I got a 10 for my hair, so it's long and straight. I got 7 for my affectations, so I got long fingernails. I rolled a 1 for my ethnicity, so I'm Anglo-American, which means I know English and everyone knows street slang. My family background determined that I rolled a 7, which means I had a crime lord family. Rolling a 6 gave me living parents. 6 means my family was in danger, and as a result, my 8 has a scattered family due to misfortune. And my childhood was a 1 on the street with no adult supervision. Next, I roll for my amount of siblings. Getting a 1, I determined that I have 1 sibling. And rolling evenly for my 1 sibling, I got a male sibling. And rolling a 6 on his attitude towards me, he's just neutral. For my motivations, my traits I rolled were 8, I'm sneaky and deceptive. My valued person is a personal hero at 9. My value that I value the most is honesty at 4, which is ironic for my traits. How I feel about people is 9, wipe them all out. And my valued possession is 4, a photograph. Next, we determine my life events after the age of 16. In order to do that, I rolled a 2d6 and got a 1 and a 5. Adding up that I am 22 years old as of starting Cyberpunk 2020. Each year, you roll to see if something happens. For my 17th year, 9, nothing happened. For my 18th year, 3, which are big problems and big wins. I rolled a 3, which means for big problems and big wins, if you roll an odd number, it's a big problem. So I rolled to see what happens, and I rolled a 3. I got an illness or an addiction that gave me -1 permanent reflex instantly. That's not good for my solo character, but you gotta take your licks and keep on moving. So at age 19, I rolled a 1, big problems, big wins, a 7, which means it's odd, so it's a big problem, and a 9, I was hunted by a corporation. It was a 7, big international corporation. What this means mechanically, I'm not sure, but the thing about the life path section is it gives your referee a lot to play with in terms of what they should introduce to the game and how it came back to haunt you from your past. Next, at year 20, I rolled a 3, big problems, big wins. I got a 6, so now it's a big win, and I rolled a 2, financial windfall. I rolled a 7, and I multiply that by 100, and I instantly got €700 gain that year. At age 21, I rolled a 7, which is romance. I rolled to see what kind of romance it was. I rolled a 2, it was a happy love affair, and nothing bad happened. Then, at age 22, I rolled a 10, and nothing happened. Thus ends the life path section of the book. Now looking back at my stats, you can see that I have a 9 in reflex instead of my preferred 10. Now we move on to section 4, the skill checks, or they call it working. For every character you create, they will have 40 points to distribute with 10 chosen career skills, which are predefined at page 44, or for custom roles chosen and justified with your referee. You can only distribute these 40 career points between the 10 chosen skills. You will have points to spend on skills outside of your career based on your intelligence plus your reflex put together. Since we are a solo, we'll go with the solo career package, which means our 10 skills are combat sense, which is the solo-centric skill, awareness and notice, handgun, brawling or martial arts, melee, weapons tech, rifle, athletics, submachine gun, and stealth. As a note, if you want a traditional progression game like in D&D starting at level 1, I would advise referees to limit their players' special ability skill tied to their role to 1 through 5, because as you can see on this table on page 58, your role, your special ability role determines how much money you get a month, how renowned or popular you are, and how skilled you are at being that specific role. If you want to have a linear progression from 1 to like 20 a la D&D, limit them to be only 1 through 5. So for example, my solo would be a street Ronin, which is not a very well-known solo, only getting $2,000 a month. I will then take this value and multiply it by 1d6 divided by 3 to determine how many years I've been currently employed and how much money my character starts with in order to spend. Therefore, I will give myself only a 5 in combat sense. Now to distribute the rest of the points. I gave myself a 4 for awareness and notice, 6 for handgun skill, 3 for brawling, no martial arts, 1 for melee, and just to note, brawling is with your hands, melee is with weapons, 0 for weapons tech, which actually isn't stated on the character sheet, so I assume it's weaponsmith, 2 for rifle skill, 5 for athletics, 6 for submachine gun, remaining 8 for stealth. Now remember, these are all skills that are associated with a stat, so everything under reflex, such as athletics, brawling, handgun, all of those will be added to your reflex when you make a roll in that specific skill category. So my total bonus for handgun would be 9 plus 6, giving me a bonus of 15. I would then add a 1d10 to the roll, and that would be my total number I would need in order to try to shoot something with my handgun. In order to track my career skills, I've put a black dot to the right of the number to make sure I can tell it apart from any pickup skills and my career skills. Now moving on to pickup skills. Pickup skills are any skills that you develop outside of your career. Your pickup skill points are determined by your intelligence plus your reflex stat. So since I have a reflex of 9 and an intelligence of 6, I get a total of 15 points to spend on anything I want outside my career. Since I want my solo to be a strong badass, I'll allocate some points to strength and intimidation. I'll put 8 points into Intimidation and 7 points into Strength. Strength just simply allows me to do things like bend bars, crush cans, or rip phone books apart. And the Intimidate skill is the skill of getting people to do what you want by force of personality or physical coercion. These are things I've developed outside my career, thus I use my pickup skills in order to get them. Every other skill that has a 0 will simply have the bonus of your stats added to them. So for example, if I attempt to do any accounting, I would just add my intelligence and then the roll of 1d10. So I can get anything between a 8 to a 16. Now we can move on to section 5 and determine our starting money for our character, and buy anything that we want, including weapons, armors, or sundries. Section 5 first describes how everyone in the cyberpunk world is essentially going place to place, couch surfing, and doesn't have a permanent place of residence. So a lot of things are conveniently small and can be fit into a very small bag that they call the outfit. But starting on page 58, you can see the table of how much money you would have per month and how infamous or renowned your character is for what they do best. As you can see, my solo is on 1 through 5, Street Ronin, 2,000 a month. Doesn't make a lot of money, and isn't very well known. You can see on page 59, in order to start out with how much funds we have to roll a 1d6, divide by 3, and then multiply that with our monthly allowance to determine how much money we have to spend before we start playing the game. I rolled a 4, so we're going to divide that by 3, and I have determined that rounding down, we only have 1 month's worth of salary to spend, including the extra $700 we got from my life path reward. As a side note, everything is measured in 0.5 to 4 kilos. So 0.5 kilos, 1 kilo, 3 kilo, 4 kilo, everything is measured in kilos. Hopefully this will make it better to track weight and how much you can carry based on your body type, but don't worry too much about it. Moving to page 60, we'll get a list of weapons, and they have associated codes with them. There's pistols, submachine guns, shotguns, rifles, heavy weapons, melee weapons, and exotic weapons. Usually you can tell a weapons category based on what they're named. Shotguns don't actually have a skill associated with them on your character sheet, so I determined that the shotgun is related to rifles. Weapons will have a name, type, accuracy, concealability, availability, damage/ammunition, number of shots, rate of fire, and reliability. These are a lot of things to remember, so I'll just cut to the chase and tell you what the important things are. Determine the weapon type. This will tell you what skill you need to use in order to shoot it. Accuracy will either give you a bonus or penalty on your roll in order to shoot with it. Damage and ammunition determines how much damage it will do and what kind of ammunition it needs. Number of shots determines the magazine size, if it has a magazine, or how many shots it can hold in one clip, quote unquote. And rate of fire determines how many times you can fire it in any one round of combat. So since Dragon invested heavily into handguns, I will choose out a heavy auto pistol. I will choose a Sternmeyer Type 35, which will cost me $400 for my $2,700 pool. Going to page 64, I will also need to have some ammunition for it. A box of 50 rounds for a heavy pistol goes for $18. I'll buy 100 for a total of $36. You might look at all these weapons and go, whoa, I want one of everything. But just remember, your skill is based on what kind of weapons you can handle, and you don't have infinite cash. You might want to save up some cash for things such as armor, cybernetics, or other sundries. Next, going to page 67, we'll get some body armor so that we can protect ourselves from damage from external forces. I'll go over combat and armor later on in this video, but for now, know that SP is your armor value, known as stopping power, and the higher the stopping power, the better protection you have against things like bullets. I'm going to choose a light armor jacket, which will give my torso and arms an SP of 14. It'll also cost me 150 eddies. I'll also pick up some heavy leather as pants, which will give me an SP of 4 for my legs. The total comes out to $200 for clothing. There's a whole list of gear that you can get, such as drugs, or communications like cellular phones, or things like binoculars, or goggles, but all that stuff is a little superfluous and pretty much up to role-playing, so I'm not going to waste too much time on it. Next, we'll move on to section 6, which is all the cybernetics that you could possibly get for playing Cyberpunk 2020. There's a whole host of cybernetics that you can possibly get for your character, but I'll go simple and choose the things that I think I'll want the most. In order to get chipped for any cybernetics, you will need Neuralware as a base, which will cost $1,000 to install. Remember, each cybernetic that you install has a cost in terms of money, humanity, surgical damage, surgical costs, and difficulty for that specific surgeon to pull it off. But because this is before the game starts, we don't have to account for most of that. We only have to account for the surgical costs, the costs of the cyberware, and how much humanity is lost getting that cybernetic enhancement. It's going to cost us $1,000 to get the Neuralware processor, and $500 to pay the surgeon to install it in us. The humanity loss is a 1d6, so a 1d6 is what I'll roll. I rolled a 5, which means I lost 5 humanity, so my starting humanity is at 80, since my empathy is 8 and I multiply it by 10. I just lost 5 humanity, which means it goes down to 75. For every 10 points of humanity you lose, the character will lose 1 point of empathy. So I still have a total empathy of 8, but once I reach 70, getting a total humanity loss of 10, I will be then reduced to 7 empathy. And remember, once your empathy reaches 0, you become a cyber psycho. Now, unfortunately for Dragon, he only has 564 euros to his name. I was going to get him chipped with a smart gun link, and then allow him to get a smart gun upgrade for his weapon. However, getting a smart gun weapon upgrade for his weapon will cost double the amount for the weapon, meaning I would need to spend a total of $400 just for the weapon, so there's no way I can afford both a smart gun and a smart gun link. Now I know what you're thinking, all these options, all these different augmentations, how is it that they can present this to you and not allow you to get them all at once? If you look at page 93 and 94, you can see that you can actually essentially sell your soul to the devil. You can sell your whole being to a corporation or a government of some kind and get $10,000 cash for each corporation you promise yourself to. This is great. It means you'll have all the eddies you want to create the perfect cyber psycho that you've dreamed of. However, this is where the catch happens. Every corporation or every government you present yourself to gives the risk of something terribly bad happening to you, your character, or your associated family. There are examples of hostages, or blackmail, or sabotaging your chipware to make sure you stay loyal to that faction, or allowing company executives to be able to kill you with just the flick of a word, or even putting a whole bomb in you if you disobey them. They can just blow you up. They can do whatever they want because you essentially sold yourself to them. You become eternally indebted to these corporations in exchange for quick cash. So that is why I'm opting for my character Dragon to not give himself over to any corporation. I value my freedom over the ability to play with all these fun cyberwares. The rest of the money will be going to things like trying to get rooms for the night, or food, or even small entertainments that his character can spend it on. That'll all happen during roleplay. I almost forgot, you have to list your SP values for each body part. In this game, when you make attacks, there's a chance that it can land on any body part listed right here on the armor SP and location. So when you make an attack, you'll actually roll 2d10. One determines if your shot makes it, another determines where it actually goes. Before we actually move on to combat, I'd like to mention that there's a system called Reputation. Your starting Cyberpunk character, given the criteria I laid out, will have a reputation of 0. You can build a reputation once you actually start doing things in the game. Current IP is also known as current improvement points. The way that you level up in this game, quote unquote, is by actively practicing your skills and increasing them by the referee giving out improvement points. Every referee will be different in how they determine giving out improvement points. The system is very up to the interpretation of the referee. But depending on how often you use them and how consciously you use them in order to improve them, you may be able to increase a skill by 1 depending on how often you do it. Just for an example, say Dragon wanted to get better at swimming. He would try swimming until he got enough improvement points to go from 0 to 1. In order to go from 0 to 1, he would need to accrue 10 improvement points in order to get to 1 of skill. If he wanted to get from 1 to 2, he would need 20 improvement points. So he would need to do double the work of what he did before in order to improve and get an extra skill in swimming. Some skills are much harder to learn than others. For example, there are some martial arts that are much harder to learn than others, but have more benefits for what kinds of moves you can do. An example would be Judo being very easy to learn and giving no multipliers at all, whereas Thai boxing has a 4 times difficulty modifier, so any improvement points you need to reach a skill threshold will be multiplied by 4. So in order to get from 0 to 1 in Thai boxing, you would need to gain 40 improvement points just to go from having no skill in it to +1 skill in it. But this is good because it accrues huge benefits to certain moves, such as strike, kick, or block, seen on page 100. But now that reputation and current IP are out of the way, we can now focus on gun combat. Combat always starts with initiative. Roll 1d10 plus reflex, the highest rolls first. This will allow you to act in combat before other people will. This can give you a huge advantage because in this game, the damage you take is very deadly. If you go to page 98, you can see a list of actions that you could possibly do in a combat. One is move up to your full movement allowance, one is attacking to your weapon's maximum rate of fire, another is dodging, which will make yourself harder to hit for melee attacks only, but will also hinder your ability to offensively dish out any damage. You also have the option of making more than one action per round. This will incur a -3 penalty for any number-based action you may wish to do in successive action. So if you wanted to take 2 extra actions in one round, you would have a -6 penalty for the 3rd action. In order to hit somebody with a bullet, you will need to determine how hard it is to actually land your shot. On page 105, there are hit numbers for distances when shooting with guns. For practically any gun, it'll always be 10 in order to land a hit when a target is point blank within 1 meter of you or touching you. If your target is the maximum distance that your gun has, it'll be 25 to try to hit them. For reference, on 99, there are attack modifiers that will determine how difficult it is to hit somebody with a certain weapon. For handguns, the weapon range lists 50 meters. This means if we go back to page 105, that it will be 25 to hit somebody with a pistol at the maximum range. When you start getting closer to your target, the hit numbers start becoming easier. Medium, or half of the distance, which is 25 meters, will be 20. Close, which is half of half, would be 15, and then touching them would be 10. So for instance, if your target is only 2 meters away from you, which is not point blank, it'll be a difficulty 15 to hit them because they go within the close difficulty. Let's just say Dragon's walking down the streets of Night City when he sees a blatant drug addict trying to run at him with a knife. The target is 25 meters away, so they both roll initiative. The addict rolled an 8 on his initiative. Adding his poor reflex skill of 2, he gets a total of 10. Dragon rolls the same. He gets a 4, adds his reflex of 9, and adds his special combat sense of 5, giving him a total of 18 for initiative. Since Dragon rolled higher, he gets to go first. Dragon is 25 meters away from the addict, meaning that to land a shot on him from this distance, he would need to get a 20 or higher in order to land the shot. However, he would still be within medium range because he wouldn't reach the threshold of getting close to the target. The target would roughly need to be within 12.5 meters, or 12 meters for simplicity's sake, in order to be considered close. The range of the handgun is 50 meters. At 50 meters, the target is 25, difficult because of long range. Because the target is half that distance, it changes to medium at difficulty 20. With Dragon's reflex of 9 and handgun skill of 6, he has a bonus of 15 to try to hit the target. He'll need to roll a 5 or higher to actually land a shot on this lunatic. He risks a shot and gets an 8 on his die roll, getting him a total of 23 to hit, which lands the hit. His pistol's rate of fire is 2, which means he'll fire 2 shots, and 2 separate shots will land somewhere on this addict. We determine where the first shot lands rolling a 1d10. My roll came up 6, which means a shot lands in his left arm. We then roll for damage. The damage on the gun is listed as 3d6 using 11mm. Rolling a 3d6, I got a total of 3 plus 2 plus 2 for a total of 7 damage points. For the sake of demonstration, I'm going to say that the addict had a huge metal arm that he liked to lug around. This gives his left arm a stopping power value of 11, Considering my damage was only 7, I didn't manage to penetrate at all, meaning that his armor has completely negated his attack. Now I roll for the location of the second bullet. I rolled a 5, which goes into his right arm. This arm only has a poultry cloth armor that gives him only 2 stopping power. Rolling 3d6 again, we determine how much damage goes into the arm. I got a 4, a 2, and a 1 for a total of 7 damage once again. Now, in order to calculate damage, we subtract the damage value from the SP of the armor. The SP is 2, meaning that 5 damage actually goes through to the addict's arm. There's an optional rule on page 102 called stage penetration. This means that any damage that gets through the SP value of armor can be permanently reduced by 1. Since that's in the Cyberpunk Red rules, I'll elect as the referee to put that in the game. Now before we say that he takes 5 total points of damage to his left arm, we have to determine what his body type modifier is. The referee informs us that this addict has a weak body type, having only 4 points in body type. That means the damage is reduced by 1, making the total damage that he takes 4. This is enough to carry the addict from light wounds to serious wounds. Now all stun saves or death saves he'll make will be at a -1. Since he has a weak body type at 4 for his body, he will need to roll a 4 - 1, 3, or lower in order to not be stunned. He rolls a 6, meaning he's stunned for his round in the action. Next combat round, Dragon decides to get a little closer. According to page 98, you may move your full movement up to 3 times your movement allowance in meters per round. Since Dragon has a movement allowance of 5, he'll move his full 15 closer to the addict. Moving 15 meters closer, he is now only 5 meters away. This puts him within the close to hit number, which is 15 to hit. He could have moved closer before, but this would have put him within striking distance of the addict if he wasn't stunned. Dragon wants to put this bastard down for good, so he's going to elect to aim directly for his head when firing. This will incur a -4 penalty, however with his bonus of 15, he'll still get an 11 bonus to try to hit. He'll need to roll a 4 or greater in order to actually land the shot. He rolled and got a 7, which is more than enough to land 2 bullets straight into this addict's skull. The addict has absolutely no headwear, so all damage will go straight through into his skull. My roll came out to 2 + 1 + 1, not a very good shot for only 4 points of damage. However, since this is a headshot, this 1 bullet doubles its damage, meaning that those 4 points of damage turned into 8. Another important rule in this game, on page 103, if any one limb takes 8 points of damage or more, it is so severely damaged that it is either crushed or shredded beyond recognition. And according to page 103, a head hit damage always doubles its damage, meaning that Dragon has managed to splatter the brains of this addict all over the pavement of Night City. If this were any other part of his body, he would have been able to attempt a death save in order to save himself. However, since this was his head, this completely incapacitates him and kills him for good. Dragon was unhurt in the exchange and spent 3 total bullets killing this target. The referee silently makes a roll behind the screen and then asks Dragon to make a roll for awareness. He has an awareness skill of 4, and he adds his intelligence of 6 for a total of 10, and then adds his combat sense, which comes into play for a +5, giving him a total of 15 to try to spot something coming. Unfortunately, he rolls a 1, a critical fail. We go back to page 43 to see if this fumble is on the fumble table. This is an awareness check that uses intelligence, so yes, it is there. Dragon rolls another 1d10 to see how bad he messed up. He rolls a 1, which means no fumble, he just doesn't know what's going on. So he still fails, but fails not horribly. It is revealed by the referee that Dragon was unable to spot the second drug addict that was flanking him from the side of the alley, coming out of trash cans. The new foe was immediately able to get an ambush off on Dragon. An ambush against any unwary target, i.e. someone who fails an awareness roll, will get +5 to attack those targets specifically. If Dragon had a friend accompanying him who saw the drug addict, he would still incur the +5 attack penalty against him since he failed to notice. This sneaky addict wields half a bottle of vodka and a ginormous scary machete. On page 111, melee attacks are determined for attacker's reflex plus skill plus 1d10 versus the defender's reflex plus skill plus 1d10. The defender may only use a various amount of skills related to combat to defend themselves. Since Dragon was caught unaware, he gets no skill added to defend himself against this machete-wielding lunatic. The attacker rolls a 9, adding his reflex and skill for a total of 22 to hit. Dragon only adds his reflex plus the roll of 6, giving a total of 15. He fails and the melee attack gets through to Dragon. Rolling to see where the actual melee attack lands, a 1d10 reveals that it lands directly on 2, which is Dragon's torso. His torso is covered by a light armor jacket with an SP of 14. However, listed on page 67 shows that this light armor jacket has a division symbol next to it. The division symbol indicates that edge weapons treat SP as half, so the total damage that I'll be able to get through the SP is reduced to half at 7. On page 64, a sword's melee damage comes out to 2d6 plus 2. Since a machete most closely resembles a sword, we will use this damage profile to see how much damage gets into Dragon. The damage comes out to a 5 plus 4 plus 2 for a total of 11 damage going into the torso of Dragon. Accounting for the stopping power of 7, and Dragon's body type modifier of strong with -4, we can determine that the damage has been reduced by 11 points, pretty much the entirety of the weapon. However, since damage did manage to penetrate into Dragon's body type modifier, he can only reduce the damage to a minimum of 1, meaning he takes 1 point of damage total. We fill out 1 square of light damage, seeing that he has a stun modifier of 0 and has 1 light wound. We do a stun save using a 1d10. We have to get the save or below in order to determine if he gets stunned or not. Since Dragon has a very strong body type, we determine that it is impossible for him to actually fail. Now that the ambush has been resolved, we roll initiative. The ambushing addict got a 3 and Dragon got a 9. With all his bonuses, he gets to go first. Considering he is point blank range at this addict, he only needs a 10 or higher to actually land a hit. He elects to press his gun at the forehead of the addict that dared to attack him and pull the trigger. This counts as an aimed hit, giving him a penalty of -4. Considering now that his bonus is 11, he will need to roll any number above 1 in order to not fumble this. He rolls a 10 and that means a critical hit. He gets to roll again and add that extra modifier to the 10 he rolled. However, since he is more than well enough to actually land this hit on this target, he chooses not to do the calculations and rolls for damage. He gets a 6, a 3, and a 2 for a total of 11 points of damage, which then double since this is a headshot. 1 bullet tunnels through the skull of this addict and lands directly in the wall behind him, painting the entire thing like a mural of death and destruction. Dragon spent 1 bullet killing his opponent and only incurred 1 point of penalty, meaning a light wound is all he suffered. His torso armor is permanently reduced to 13 because of this exchange. Now that combat's over, Dragon elects to try to see if these addicts had anything valuable on them. To no surprise, there is literally nothing on them that he could even sell or get any eddies for. Since he did take actual damage in this fight, he will need to actually address his wound, because if he doesn't, it might fester and the referee might determine that he takes even more damage or even contracts some sort of disease. He goes down to the local shop and buys himself a med kit for $50, seen on page 68. He'll be able to attempt to patch up his wounds on his own, considering it's only a light scratch. He then decides to go around the corner and get some housing. It'll be $100 per night for a hotel room, but considering he doesn't want to spend too much cash, he decides to spend only $20 per night in what they call a coffin. On page 71, it's described that a coffin is 1 step up from a sleeping bag on the street, a stacked accommodation which resembles its namesake. For a real-life comparison, check out the term capsule hotel, mostly found in Japan. Dragon gets comfy with his new accommodations for the night and attempts to heal himself up. On page 116, it is stated that you must roll a value greater than the total number of points of damage the patient has taken. You can perform some injury repairs yourself, only if the wounds are not that dire. Dragon busts out the first aid and gets to work. Considering this is a first aid kit, he will need to use a first aid skill in order to successfully heal himself up. First aid is listed under the technology stat. The technology stat that Dragon has is only 3. However, since his wound is only 1 in the light category, he only needs to succeed on a 1 or greater. I would like to remind you that if you do happen to roll a 1, you critically fail. But thankfully, Dragon barely makes it, rolling a 2. This gives him a total of 5, which is more than enough to pass to put a bandage around his wound that he got in his torso. But the healing doesn't happen immediately. As you can see on page 116, there are rates of healing by which you recover. Using first aid, he'll only heal 0.5 points per day. He'll have to relax for 2 days in order for the wound to fully heal. This can be modified depending on what you get, seeing that Medical Tech will heal you 1 point per day, and Medical Tech plus Speed Healing will heal you for 2 points per day. But considering Dragon is broke and has no wealthy benefactors, it's safe to assume that he'll just lie low for a couple of days until he's fully recovered and ready for action once again. 1 day passes and he spends about 20 eddies on food, just relaxing and lounging around waiting for his wound to heal up. But surprise surprise, someone from his past comes to haunt him. When Dragon awakes from his coffin, he sees that he has a visitor. It's his ex-lover, the one that he had at 22. She seems to have tracked him down and seems to want to have a fun time once again in their youth. Honestly, this was 2 years ago, but that's what the referee has used. They start fooling around, but before things can get serious, she pulls out a knife and stabs him repeatedly in the neck. It's revealed that the same corporation that he was hunted by at age 19 recruited her specifically to get revenge on this hard-bitten solo. She rolled a critical success and managed to land a hit directly into his neck, which counts as his head, for a total of 30. Dragon was clearly ambushed, meaning she gets a +5 against him. Dragon rolls to defend himself, but only gets a 7 plus his reflex of 9, giving him a total of 16. Nowhere close he needs to contend with his ex-lover. The damage for a knife is 1d6, listed on page 64. She rolls and gets a perfect 6. But remember, since this is head damage, it gets multiplied by 2, meaning that she dealt 12 damage directly into his jugular. Dragon grabs his throat and starts gasping for air, but the more he gasps, the more blood gushes out, and the more he starts to lose consciousness. There are no death saves he needs to make, because now he is officially dead. This scenario came about not through any rolls, but by the referee's decision to intermingle Dragon's past. In the world of Cyberpunk 2020, the corporation always wins. Before Dragon passes out and loses consciousness to death, he hears the snapping of what sounds like a credit card. Unbeknownst to Dragon, his ex-lover has snapped her trauma card in half, signaling them to come and help a patient out. When Trauma Team arrives, she instructs them to help her ex-lover onto their AV4, confirming that she's willing to pay the bill after they treat him. She accompanies them back to the hospital, where he gets fully treated for all his wounds. It took them only 5 minutes to get to Dragon and his ex-lover. 5 minutes means that he was in Death State 5. Once you're at Death State 10, you are dead and there's no hope of reviving you whatsoever. Since all Trauma Team squads have a very decent med tech, it was a very easy check for them, relatively speaking, to be able to stabilize Dragon and have him not die in their hands. Dragon is getting the best treatment money can buy from Trauma Team, so he's healing 3 points per day. Coming back from the brink of death means all of your injuries will be filled with black, as seen here. But since Dragon is getting treated so well, he will be healed for 3 points per day. Dragon will be fully unconscious until he can reach a level of Mortal 2 or higher on his injury chart. Since he's healing at 3 points per day thanks to the best medical tech money can buy, he will be able to wake up in 6 days. When he finally comes to, he sees his ex-lover, the bitch that stabbed him in the throat. Understandably, he's pissed as all hell. However, she calms him down by explaining that there was a loophole that she exploited. During the years apart, it's determined that she became a corpo and realized that the corporation she was working for was the same corporation that despised Dragon for getting involved in things he shouldn't have. She realized that there was a $500,000 Eddie bounty on Dragon's head. She read the contract very specifically and realized that they only wanted him dead, but not permanently. By killing him and confirming that she has killed him, she has earned herself 500,000 eddies through his temporary death. She explains that she was excited to learn about this because it means that she can be with him while being filthy rich. Dragon, after hearing her explanation, is completely disarmed and no longer angry. He makes a comment on how lucky he is to be with a psycho bitch like her and immediately pulls in for a kiss. This reunited couple has found a newfound small fortune and happiness in each other through the shedding of their own blood. After thinking about it, this was a pretty good exchange for a dragon, all things considered. It can't be said that Cyberpunk doesn't have happy endings. Okay, so that was my example tutorial for teaching Cyberpunk 2020. As you can see, there are a lot of rules for beginners to learn, and it can be pretty overwhelming. I tried to put all the fundamentals that I could in trying to teach this system to new people. Hopefully anyone out there who decides to watch this in order to learn how to play Cyberpunk 2020 will get some useful information out of it. I tried to have all parts where I was speaking and demonstrating a skill or how to calculate something to be as concise as possible, because I neglected to mention the plethora of different skills and rules you may need to actually do in order to play this game to its fullest. An example will be that when using a shotgun, it fires in a cone pattern and does less damage the farther from the cone you are. There's also a whole host of different things that you can do and keep track of on page 99 that should try to help you to determine what exactly you can do with what. For example, when throwing a grenade, if you miss, you have to see how many meters away from its intended target it actually managed to land. There's also rules for fully automatic guns that allow you to land multiple shots into one target using the maximum rate of fire equal to the automatic gun's clip. If you want to learn more, either go through my videos or read the sections of the manual that you find the most interesting or want to figure out. But as a fundamental basis for how to play in a typical Cyberpunk game, I think that this serves as well as any other. Good luck learning Cyberpunk 2020. It is one of my favorite systems for modern combat I've ever stumbled across, and I hope you have as much fun with it as I have. My next video will be a new player-friendly guide to net running, as that's a whole game unto itself. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until next time.